Okay, part of the match which I've just annotated in my game, we had J.Pigott playing for us on board 1, so Barnet's top rated player, 2 IM norms, over 220 ECF. He was playing against P.Kemp, so the time control is 80 minutes in this Ryder Cup of the Hearts League for all moves. No adjournments, no adjudications, just all moves, 80 minutes. John playing black. Some of you may enjoy this game, perhaps potentially more than a previous game which I called Earning Laziness, which was another Brilliancy by John. But this is a great game. Okay, you're in for a treat. I hope I can do justice to it at 5 in the morning. E4 was played by P.Kemp, and the Caro-Kann was used, and now this is a very trendy variation, C4, trying to interfere with black playing D5, often holding on to a pawn. John sacrifices a pawn anyway. He plays D5, and after ED, CD, C takes D, he puts pressure on D5 instead of capturing. Here he plays knight F6. He doesn't want white to play like knight C3 and then D4, getting a tempo on the queen, so knight F6. But now white really interferes with black being able to regain the pawn. White plays bishop B5 check. So this disruptive check means that if bishop D7, that maybe bishop C4 is on the cards, and then knight C3, and then it's going to be hard sometimes to get this pawn back. White's going to put more and more pieces on D5. But I believe David Bronstein had a very nice win in this line in the Lloyd's Bank Masters a few years back, which shows some of the dangers of white trying to hold on to the pawn. But here is another demonstration that it can be dangerous. John simply played actually knight Bd7, so not minding at the moment the D5 pawn not being able to regain it. Knight C3, and now A6, with the idea that if the bishop goes back, then B5 and bishop B7 maybe, and if the bishop goes over here it looks a bit passive, and again maybe B5 and bishop B7. Black will be starting to put huge pressure on D5. So Paul actually took on D7, and now we have queen takes D7, and white holds on to the pawn with queen B3. There's a slight, or rather big, downside to this whole idea. Okay, white's holding on to the pawn, but he has given up the light square bishop, which means these light squares are potentially a bit weaker than usual without the light square bishop. So bear that in mind for any future tactics you're going to see shortly in this game. And in fact, immediately pressure is put on the king side now of white with queen G4, and it's difficult already for white. Perhaps the miserable queen A4, as I suggested in post-mortem of this game, might be good to get the queens off, but black has the bishop pair and the better structure. If you look at the pawn islands, there's 2 pawn islands here, and there's 3 actually for white, and obviously black's bishop pair could be pretty nasty as well as D4, I think potentially weak. So this kind of ending I think would be favouring black, as John implied. So that wasn't played. Queen A4 check wasn't played. G3 was played, and so white is weakening more of the of the light squares with this move G3, and is unable to get natural development. John continues his own development by playing G6, and now knight Ge2, inviting actually queen F3, and white dare not castle already. Big problems here. It looks fairly dangerous to castle, but I think we need to check it out actually. I'm going to put a Kd2. Is there a crushing move here? Bishop H3, threatening mate. I'll sort of bring this up actually so you can see it. See the lines, it's slightly better for black. That would be contested. to just win the exchange. So it's unfortunate now that white has to play rook g1. John continues his development, bishop g7, and there's an imminent threat as well now of knight g4, and in advance that's anticipated with this next move, queen b6, which also restrains these pawns, so b5 might have been useful for black as well. Nevertheless, black plays knight g4 anyway. There's another idea here, not just attacking f2, which is obviously protected, or h2, but in fact after d3 to play this swinging move with the knight e5. So on the d3 pawn, white offers up d3 to try and get out of trouble really by playing bishop e3. It's taken and the king moves to d2. So how does black sustain the pressure now? Well, John in this position with the king displaced on d2 simply plays knight e5, which carries with it the very nasty threat of actually winning the queen with a nasty fork. Okay, so there's a threat of knight c4, which is parried now by b3. Now John puts pressure on d3, he plays queen f5, so not only threatening queen d3 but also maybe knight f3 is dangerous. Rook moves to d1, and now John actually simply gets his king out of any potentially annoying checks and completes development, of the king. Well, he castles into safety. White plays queen b4. Okay, now the fun really starts after check with the black queen after king c1. Seemingly unpre, but John ignores it. He just plays bishop f5 because if rook takes d3, then there's another fork here. So that would be good for black. So the queen's actually immune now off bishop f5 for the moment. King b2 was played, and if I give you 10 seconds, I wonder if you can spot a winning combination here, or you might want to stop the video. So either stop the video or try and guess the next move. So I'll give you 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, a stunning little combination now is played by John. He plays queen takes e2 check. It opens up this diagonal actually against the king. So after knight takes e2, I'll give you a bit of a clue for this next move. I'll give you 10 seconds here. Can you spot black's next move? 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, I hope that you chose the move knight c4. This is the killer double check, forcing the king to go to c1 actually as the only move. Give yourself some points though if you played knight d3, you're winning the exchange. Knight d3 check and you can win the exchange, because after king takes, bishop takes a1 and black will be better. But John played the even more crushing and devastating knight c4 double check and discovered check. Beautiful. And actually white resigned here. So after king c1, I'll give you another 10 seconds to see if you can see why white resigned. If he had played king c1, what would be the final move? So 10 seconds starting from now. Okay, bishop b2 is actually made. The king cannot go anywhere. All of these squares are cut off. What a stunner. So that was John's first game of the season for some months as black. So if you want to play the Caro-Kann and you've been a bit worried by this c4 line, maybe This game has some ideas that you can sack the pawn, not minding actually playing knight Bd7 here. Let white have the pawn for a while, play a6, just grab that light square bishop, try and get in onto the light squares. So queen b3 maybe wasn't the best. Maybe actually queen f3 keeps black out of g4. If we added an engine Kbitzer, I wonder if queen f3, actually knight f3 is just giving back the pawn actually, and then after castles b5, apparently white's okay here according to the engine. So what was played is actually dangerous, really dangerous. Now after queen g4, this is actually an engine recommended move, actually queen g4, and really going really downhill really quick. So g6, putting the bishop on a nice diagonal. So knight g4 with the knight swinging in around, celebrating these light square weaknesses. White's just giving up that light square bishop, so we can expect some repercussions on light squares sometimes. So knight takes d3, check. The knight moves to e5, now threatening knight c4. That's parried with b3. Stop knight c4. Queen f5 coming in to d3, or knight f3 might be useful, threatening actually to win the exchange anyway as well. Should have pointed that out before. But so the rook actually moved away from that problem. Black just castled now calmly. Okay, so queen b4, maybe that's not the best move, as after check that b4 location of the queen could be used now with bishop f5. So white dare not take on d3. Little did white suspect anything after king b2 that this really crushing tactical blow would be played here now. Queen takes e2, check, unleashing a discovered and double check. Knight c4, discovered check from the bishop, double check because it's a knight check as well. So the king is forced to move after a double check. King c1 wasn't played. White just resigned here, but if it had been played, then the finisher would have been bishop e2 mate. So another very enjoyable kind of artistic game from J.Pigott. Congratulations, John. We actually crushingly won the match, as it turned out, 4.5-1/2, after some controversy around one of their players being sent home after some misunderstanding about the schedule, but we ended up beating Royston on this occasion, and this was the board 1 encounter. Comments or questions on YouTube. And if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, King's Cross channel, please do. It's free and you'll be notified of any new videos. Thanks very much.